5 dimensions, 10 kingdoms, 9 cities, 1 story. Welcome to Arclanders Assemble, the weekly podcast of the Arcverse. Each week, Team Verse will take you on a guided tour from the streets of Arc to the icebound islands of Celestium. There'll be GMing tips, world-building advice, plus monsters, heroes and lore. Join us for this ride through our 5th edition compatible universe and answer the call to arms, Arclanders Assemble! Hi there again and welcome back to this episode of Arclanders Assemble. We've got a load of things to talk about this week, so we're going to do the roundup of all the Arcverse news. There's plenty to talk about, loads and loads of things going on our world Anvil, loads of really exciting developments with the Arclander, which is coming very very soon now, and some really cool ideas coming forward for the Kickstarter, the Book of the Phantasm, which will be launching the preview page for that at the start of October, all things being equal. Later on, I'm going to talk about money systems and why it is the things like the gold piece as a kind of like a global standard in a fantasy world is virtually impossible to create, and so why it is currencies have to be more complex than that, more intricate than that, and where currencies come from, and all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about some world building ideas after that, and look at some ideas around how to develop your world building, your Kickstarter idea. But before we do any of that, we'll hear a little bit now about what's happening in the Arcverse and what you can become involved in. Okay, so if you've never listened to this podcast before, the Arcverse is a set of 5 dimensions that we here at Verse Online have designed for RPG players to be compatible. It's a 5th edition compatible, and you can find it on our World Anvil site. It's a D&D universe, except it doesn't have within it any D&D character origins. We don't use the word race or classes. We've redesigned the character classes and character origins, and it in fact has a completely original magic system, our own unique bespoke magic creation system called spell forging. In short, the one god of the universe, the Keeper, a thoroughly disreputable deity who has, through his priests, a very, very good PR system to present himself as being rather benign. 300 years ago, mysteriously, the Keeper died. There are all sorts of reasons for this that you can read about in the Book of the Graces. And with the death of the Keeper, the magical energy that he had hoarded floods back into the 5 dimensions, causing all sorts of chaotic and unpredictable outcomes. And the mortal realm, the world of Hermia in the mortal realm, and in Hermia mainly the continent of Aestis, is a place that is really teetering on the brink. You know, it has had these huge, great social and cultural shocks when most Aestians realise that not only is the Keeper gone, but this fearsome, frightening stuff magic has returned to the world. The dimensional gates are opening up all over the place, and there are strange non-humans that have actually always, to some extent, been there, but now they are far more apparent. Human beings don't like to share. I think we know that about ourselves as a species. Human beings are very wary of these new changes in in their world. A bit like our world, really. So I don't know, maybe some kind of form of Arclands, some form of kind of fascism will emerge at some point, and the frightened mass will huddle to a strong man. It's almost inevitable, isn't it? Anyway, so that's what the Arcverse is. You can find this if you go to our website. If you go to www.verserpg.online, www.verserpg.online, and that will link you through to all our content. You can find us on Twitter at VerseHome, and there's a lovely link tree there again with all our content. And if you find us on DriveThru RPG, we're actually giving away free things. So go and find us on DriveThru, and you can get a free Arclands taster pack, which will have in all new character origins, all new character classes, and the bare bones of the spell forging mechanic system. All yours for free. Okay, so what have we been doing in the last week or so? Well, we've been deeply enriching the experience, the user experience on World Anvil. We've taken our timeline of the events from the end of the Vanik Empire. The Vanik Empire was the first empire of Aestus, which collapsed and was replaced by the Arc Empire. The Arc Empire collapsed 900 years ago and really gave birth to a number of city-states that now are in competition with one another. So we've taken the story all the way up to 900 years ago and the collapse of the Arc Empire. If you look in our timelines section on our World Anvil site, again, the link is in our website, and I'll post some links down below. You can then see the progression of this grand story that flows over thousands of years. This is just the kind of like the bare bones of what we're going to do. And there are other timelines now emerging. And what we want to eventually be able to do is give you this really, really rich picture of a long and complicated history of all the nations of this often war-afflicted continent. So there's that there for you, and we've added some really, really amazing new artwork to the site to give you depictions of places like Aloris, the Celestial Realm, the Streets of Arc. So do check out our World Anvil. If you're not familiar with World Anvil, by the way, it's one of the great innovations in fantasy world building and roleplay gaming of the last 10 years. I have to say, I met the founders, Janet and Dimitris, when it was just a kind of like a fledgling concept, and now it's a world-beating monster. And if you a world builder yourself, or you have a Kickstarter and you want to flesh it out and give that extra content to people, get yourself down to World Anvil. Open it. You can establish yourself a free site. There are countless tools there. A massive online community full of help and support with some of the nicest people you'll ever like to come across. Get in there. There's a massive resource waiting there for you, most of which is usable for free. Okay, that's and by the way, I don't get paid, or we don't get paid by World Anvil for saying nice things. We do it because we mean it. Okay, so there you go. So World Anvil is kind of the nexus of a lot of our activities at the moment, and what we've tried to do is, and of course I do this because I'm a history teacher, and we've got various kind of academics and archaeologists and all sorts of people on our team. We try to give you a really depth kind of understanding of how the world works, how things that would never even come into sort of dungeon dives and adventures, how the system of education in Arc works, how the currency works, how the law system works, the legal system works, what people's religious ideas are. We've really packed in this kind of just into the city of Arc, this social and cultural history there. So if you like your depth-rich world-building experiences, it's right there for you. And obviously we've got some fledgling novels that are gradually being written chapter by chapter on there as well, including one I'm very proud of at the moment, A Fire in the Heart of Knowing, which you'll be hearing more about later this week. We've also been able on World Anvil to flesh out the second of the 5 dimensions we're exploring, the Celestial Realm. We've taken some of the content from the Book of the Graces and really began to adapt that and develop it. If you are one of our subscribers as well, we have a subscription. You can follow us on Patreon. You can subscribe on Patreon for $3 a month and get access to all sorts of additional content, plus monthly maps and one-shot adventures. If you wish to go for our higher tier, which I think might be $7 a month, then you'll be able to access our forthcoming zine for free quarterly, the Arclander, which will arrive with you. It's 60 full colour pages of art, adventures, new articles, and all sorts of cool stuff. Brilliant feature we're doing in the Arclander this month. Our Vowbinder class, which is one of our caster add-ons. Vowbinders are sort of our version of the Warlock. We've got given a series of new kind of deities and demigods and other entities that the Vowbinder can become can come sort of probably quite unwisely in the service of. So there are all manner of great reasons to check out what we do, and particularly check out the Arclander, which is coming probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Anyway, so let's get on to the sort of the lead feature today, money. Okay. Firstly, I suppose you might be asking yourself, who cares? Why is this important? If you want your roleplay game or your world-building experience to be pretty standard and straightforward and lacking, shall we say, deeper dimensions, I guess it isn't really that important. In the standard D&D starter set all the way up through to 5th edition, you have gold, silver, and copper pieces, and I think the electrum is in there as well, just to kind of shake things up a bit. And these are just units of currency that make it easy to pay for small things, medium-sized things, and big things. It's entirely functional. It's as you would want money to be, simple and easy to use. But you see, money isn't simple and easy to use. And if you look at where money comes from, why we have coinage, and why it is that society's created coinage, there's a long and complicated and kind of not very nice story behind it. So the very, very simple way of looking at medieval coinage is a king wants to do something expensive, normally wage a war. So the king issues currency, or the kingdoms tend to issue currency for the population to use. And then they take some of that currency back in taxation. So the first point is that the king is the font of all currency. There is a royal mint or some place that the king has probably controlled gold and silver mines in order to mint currency. And if they haven't got that, then you might have paper currency or something else. There might be peer-to-peer currencies, so people in villages who don't have access to coins, they might create little wooden tokens that are redeemable for a chicken or a pint of ale or something like that. But why does the king do this? Why does the king create currency, give it to the population, circulate it through the population, and then take some of it back? Well, it's a means of extracting labour. Okay, so let's say that there is a wage labourer that has to work for 3 gold pieces a week, and the 3 gold pieces represent the work that he's done. Well, he's probably done 5 gold pieces worth of work, but he's only going to get paid 3 for them, because all forms of kind of economic life that we have created on this planet so far involves some extraction of labour. He'll pay one of those gold coins to the Baron, who rules his little fiefdom, where his village is, in terms of rent. And he's got 2 gold coins left. 1 gold coin will feed his family, and the other will go in taxation. So what's taxation doing? And currency doing? Well, it's extracting wealth. It's extracting what I suppose Marx would call the surplus labour value of the peasant. It's taking that's why there is a coin. Okay, so in order in a D&D campaign that might span an entire world for gold pieces to exist, there must be, if we're just going to think of a standard unit of 1 gold piece, 1 issuer of gold. And that issuer of gold is doing the same thing to peasants all around the world, and maybe the elves there, and the dwarves, and the goblins, and all these kinds of people. He is extracting labour through the issuance of currency, and then the removal of part of that currency through taxation. And the reason why he has a mandate to do that, I say it's a he, could be a she, the way he has a mandate to do that is, if we go back to the Middle Ages again, the idea was a medieval king, say William the Conqueror, has been put on the throne by God. This is what the church has told us, and therefore all subjects on his land owe him a debt of service and a debt of good behaviour, sort of moral debts, but also financial debts. They owe him taxation, and so they're paying back the debt of existing on the land that he stole from underneath them and is giving back to them. Feudalism's a horrible thing, it really is. Now, of course, if we let's imagine ourselves a fantasy continent where there is a kingdom of men, a kingdom of elves, a kingdom of dwarves, a kingdom of gnomes, a kingdom of halflings. Unless the human king has conquered everybody else, then the uniformity of the currency is not going to exist. It might be that elven and dwarvish currencies, and it might be that elves and dwarves and halflings work in roughly the same way and extract labour value. But you'd imagine elves, which are thousands and thousands of years old, don't have the economics that human beings do, because the fact that someone lives for thousands of years, or everyone lives for thousands of years, really upsets the apple cart in that regard. But we'll come along to, the possibilities of an elven communist utopia later on. There will be different kingdoms, different fiefdoms with different economic rationales, different reasons for issuing coin. The thing that makes the coin valuable is either the value that is affixed to it. That's in a simple medieval setting, it might be that 1 gold piece. There are official documents that say, or official edicts that say what a gold piece is worth, what you can buy for it, or there might be some kind of market mechanism. The market mechanism will only function if the king's face is on the coin, because the person who is selling the goods and receiving the currency will only be willing to do that if they can see the king's face on it. Then they know that it comes from the king's treasury, it is issued by the king. So your gold piece has to have a kind of more of an identity. It has to have something on it. You have to be able to, your players might be able to look at a hoard of gold pieces and go, well, those gold pieces, they don't actually have any intrinsic value. They're from somewhere else. I don't know if you can even spend them here. So it would be a great way to disappoint your players, to mess with the currency. Or they come from another poorer kingdom, which they can only be spent there, and that poorer kingdom, well, they don't have many nice things to buy. It might be that a certain currency trader, of which there were currency traders all the way back in ancient Greece. So there is all sorts of scope for having medieval currency traders if you're having a medieval setting. Certain currency traders that might say, but that country has strange and rare crystals that I can only purchase, that most people don't want, but I do because they're part of an alchemical thing I'm doing. And I could find use for those coins you've got that will help me purchase those rare crystals. Think imaginatively here. But at the very least, you'll have in a continent with different societies and different peoples, and obviously different origins, different creatures, they will have different modes of economic activity. They'll have different philosophical ideas about debt and ownership and work and rents and feudalism and all that kind of stuff. Some might have advanced way beyond feudalism and not have these kinds of economic principles at all. So you're going to have probably across a continent or a world a series of very different kinds of currencies. And what the currency is I guess it's a physical manifestation of the economic relations that exist in that society. And so as a result, it's quite a coin is quite a unique artifact. A coin tells really quite a unique and interesting story about how people have made their way through the world. This is why, if you look at the history of money in our world, it's a very, very varied thing. We don't have a universal currency. We don't have a gold piece. Within a few years of the gradual digitization of currency, we might wind up that way. But you'd have to imagine that the US Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank or the Bank of England or whatever currency issuing entity that a nation state has would have to kind of consent to homogenizing economies and all that sort of stuff. The kind of the stuff of which kind of revolutions and wars are fought over. So hopefully we won't go there. So I think one key thing that I keep finding in world building again and again is that when you look at the material base of your society, who owns what and how they came to own it, who does the work, who owns the land, who owns the means of, who owns the mines, who owns the banking houses, who owns the ships. When you answer those kinds of questions, then the economic basis of a society emerges. When an economic basis of a society emerges, a kind of culture emerges. When you think that the Arkish society is based on debt, well, all sorts of kind of rituals, a kind of civic religion almost of debt and the punishment of the debtor emerges in order for Ark to function at all, this kind of rather brutal economic system to function and to create Ark as the preeminent power. Then you can start asking yourself history questions. Well, how did we get here? Why did this happen? Who benefited from this cruel and unfair arrangement? Well, it was the bankers and their feud with the nobles, the people who extract financial rents from those who they rule, as opposed to those who extract land rents from those they rule. And then you've got this kind of rich and complex series of social interactions in this kind of very, very, very varied picture, which can come into the writing of scenarios. So if you want to have a kind of a realistic and rich experience for your players when you are world building, the idea that you walk into a tavern and you meet a stranger and a bunch of other adventures and they send you off on a quest, that's great. But when you can build around it social relations, cultural history, the story of the coins in your pocket, it really, really adds something. Or it just makes an interesting read on our World Anvil page. You decide. Anyway, so that's kind of why we do what we do. And I want to talk more in the coming weeks about how about issues like in fantasy worlds, particularly medieval settings, education, the system of law, and a lot of it is based on obviously the history of our world. But there are interesting ways to kind of take that and adapt it and bend it and meld it and shape it and give it that sort of flavour of realism without having to make it sort of painfully drudge-like, because obviously existing as a peasant in the Middle Ages would have been exceedingly boring, and the only opportunity of any kind of fun and adventure at all might have been joining one of the king's wars in the Holy Land. But also losing that thread of realism at the other end of the spectrum is something that I don't think does anyone a service at all, unless you want to write a kind of a real sort of Narnia level high fantasy, which is kind of divorced from any concept of realism at all. Unless you want to do that, which you can do, but I think a kind of an aspect of realism needs to run through most games for them to be credible. Even in high fantasy like Lord of the Rings, there are elements of realism. The way in which the society of the Rohirrim is organised, or what Minas Tirith is like. There are elements of realism within it. Anyway, I digress. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today was some Kickstarter ideas, and this is really something we address to absolute newbies. If you've never done a Kickstarter before, I'm trying to encourage. If you listen to this, send us a message, and I'd be happy to help. I'm trying to encourage out on Twitter a little bit of Kickstarter solidarity. The reasons for this are simple. Now, we've done 3 successful Kickstarters, and we're going to launch our 4th one in November, and we want that to be a success as well, and I think it will be. But each and every time, we have to do that cringe thing of going to the community with our caps out. And, well, obviously we offer the community back some amazing experiences and some brilliant content and all this fab stuff. But what if we gave things first? What if we said to to everyone out there who is just getting started, can we help? And my belief is, and just a little philosophical belief here, that if you're always prepared to be giving, then all the karma will do the rest. All the good stuff in life will come to you, and also giving is its own reward. So what I wanted to talk about was basically what we have learned from 3 Kickstarters. And it's a bit like, there's a reason why they call it a launch. You've got to do 90% of your work in maybe the 3 months before you go live, perhaps even the 6 months before you go live. You have to look at your tribe. Maybe you've got 10 people, maybe you've got 10,000, I don't know. If you've got 10,000, you don't need to be listening to this. But your little online tribe, even if you've got 10 people, that's okay, that's a good place to start. And you need to start seeding them with the idea of what you're going to do. Not selling, but kind of seeding them with the idea. It's telling them. So that they begin to mentally prepare, or you begin to mentally prepare them for the launch. You need to make sure that that you give tons of time, plenty of time, to prepare the actual Kickstarter page with artwork, videos, and everything. Look at the person that is doing something like you, but they've raised £100,000. Find a dozen of them on Kickstarter and look at what they did. You don't have to slavishly follow them, and there might be some things that you think, that's not really for me. But there'll be common themes emerging amongst the most successful Kickstarters. Look at what those are. And then you can start to synthesize what your offer really looks like. I did do a thing a while back on the idea on the World Anvil blog about the idea of the core concept. You need to make sure that your core concept makes sense and that you can sum it up like kind of an elevator pitch. The core concept for Arclands the Spellforger's Companion is a new world for 5th edition where players can forge their own spells. Boom, done. It's a sentence. Obviously, there's a ton more of it than that, but there's much more to it than that. But that's the core concept. So once you've got a core concept, you've built your Kickstarter page, and we'll talk more about that in subsequent episodes. And your Kickstarter page is looking really sharp with really great artwork, because this is a visual business. If you don't have good artwork, it'll be forgettable instantaneously, and that your offer is simple and to the point, and people can get it in a heartbeat. You begin to simultaneously start seeding that audience and developing that audience. Look at all the places that you can get engagement, that people know you already. There is a principle that in web marketing of going where the audience already is. Well, yes, do that. Go to Kickstarter pages on Facebook and all that kind of stuff, and Kickstarter groups. But bear in mind, you're not talking necessarily to people that are interested in Kickstarters there. You're talking to people that want to promote their stuff to you just as you want to promote your stuff to them. Cool, you might find some backers there. But be realistic about those kind of places. And lots and lots of online portals, lots and lots of Facebooks are becoming very, very anti-spammy sort of stuff of, here's our thing, please back us. And that will just piss people off as well, by the way. Because think of the last half a dozen people that tried to sell you something and really annoyed you. So it can't be done in a salesy way. It has to be done in a subtle and long-term way. And why do I say that? Because subtle and long-term isn't about selling, it's about relationships. Yes. You've got to build up friends online, people who know you and like you, and they'll be willing to take a punt on you. And this, again, has to be done in a genuine way. Obviously, people do not like it when you are presenting yourself as a friendly person and you are not really. It has to be done in a kind of an organic way, and you have to kind of pick your moments as well. There are certain people that aren't going to be interested. If you have a high fantasy product and there's somebody and they are into horror and Cthulhu and all that kind of stuff, really, I mean, unless they are wanting to branch out, that's going to be a hard sell. If somebody's looking for a bicycle, don't try and sell them a car. The thing to do, the thing that you're looking for, is not to game the Kickstarter algorithm, but to give the Kickstarter algorithm what it wants to see. You have to pass on the first day, a kind of a little Kickstarter exam, so to speak. The Kickstarter algorithm will take notice of your project when it starts to, in a short space of time, attract backers. And attract backers who are backing enough to make a significant dent in your overall goal. If you don't have that, the Kickstarter algorithm will not pay any attention to you. It is Kickstarter Darwinism. You will become the kind of the runt of the litter, which becomes harder and harder to get fed. Now, if you are a big, greedy little piglet, which I advise you to be, you'll make sure that by day -1, you have every single last person from your little online tribe to your friends, relatives, anybody. Don't debase yourselves. Do not be embarrassed, because this could be your dream. Every single solitary person who is going to get their hands in their pockets, even if it's just for £1 or $1, or $5 or $10, that they are going to back, and they're going to do it roughly at the same time. So you've got to remind them of when you're going live, and why it is so important that they back you on the day. Because lots of people backing in one go to the algorithm looks like a bang. It looks like an explosion going off. then the algorithm will come sniffing. I'm talking to the algorithm about the algorithm as if it's like a living entity. And for your purposes, you have to think that it kind of is. It will come sniffing, and it will look at how your Kickstarter is, and it will look at how it is keyworded and all that stuff, and start plonking it in front of people who also back that kind of thing. Do you ever get emails from Kickstarter? Do you ever get alerts from Kickstarter? Well, it's because some clever person out there has gamed the algorithm, and they're giving the algorithm what it wants. Now, the algorithm is like some kind of vengeful god, and if you give it the right sort of offerings, it will be appeased, and it will do nice things. And if you do not, it will spurn you, and you do not wish to be spurned. So, getting that day one right, and if on day one you recognise that you might not get anything else done that day, but what you want to do is get that launch happening, and make sure that it is the most important thing going in your life for that 24 hours. You'll be on you'll be on tenterhooks, and you will make your life infinitely easier if you set a funding goal for yourself, which is the smallest viable amount of money that you need to raise. Okay? You are looking to raise, goes totally against what some people perhaps think Kickstarter should be doing. You are looking to raise the smallest viable sum of money. Okay? Because probably you'll raise more than that. If you set yourself a goal of $1,000, because that's what it will cost to do the print run and the art and all the other stuff, get your costs right, by the way, and that's really, really important. There's a military helicopter going overhead, if you're wondering what the interference is. If you get your sums right and you set yourself the minimum viable sum of money you need to achieve, then you will bring the bar of success down as low as it can go. Because on your first one, you want to go over that bar as fast as possible. Okay? I have known of people who, with pound signs in their eyes, thought, for some bizarre reason, if I set my goal at 20,000, then people will give me that. It's like, well, no, it's an all or nothing site. If you set your goal at 20,000, they'll maybe give you 2.5. If you set your goal at 2, you're 500 quid up on the deal. If you set yourself a goal of 20,000, there's no way you'll reach it. And in a way, why should you? You're expecting, as an unknown, for people to take a punt on you in the way that they would take a punt on, say, The Legend of the Five Rings, or their new Blade Runner RPG, or something like that. Something that is a kind of a very big established concept. And we've got to dial in our vanity here. We've all got great ideas. The whole point about this is that every single Kickstarter out there is a great idea, normally. Normally, anyway. Might be a few ropey ones. But it's the execution. And if people don't know you yet, and I've got to say, people don't really know Verse Online particularly. We've done 3 Kickstarters, and they've all been successful, and we've gone way over our targets. But, we've not cracked 10, 20, 50 grand yet. But, we've got to, we're soldiering in that direction. But you have to have that kind of humility. And you know what? Most people on Kickstarter get that, and they understand it, and they know when you're a new starter. And people are always looking for new things. They're always looking for new, interesting stuff. And there'll be people out there who will be willing, if you go about it in the right way, to take a punt on you. And that's all you're asking for. Take a punt on what I do for an affordable sum for you. And your job after that, and again we'll talk about this in another episode, is to pack their experience full of value. Give their experience an absolute ton of value, and keep giving it to them. Keep engaging in conversation with them. Keep use Kickstarter or back a kit to have this, to keep them updated, and to be a nice guy or a nice girl, because people like that, unsurprisingly. Right, okay. So, again, anyone that wants any guidance, any thoughts, any advice, any help, I am not the most successful Kickstarter in the world, but I have nailed it 3 times in a row. So, there you go. What little I have, I am happy to share and happy to give, because that's how the world goes round. Okay, so we're going to wrap up in a little bit, but some exciting developments. So myself and Chloe, one of our new team members, have been, along with Alex as well, laying out the concept ground rules for next year's Kickstarter, the Book of the Fae. This is going to be so amazing. It's going to be an interesting combination of medieval and Japanese folklore, time travel, a long back history. The Fae have been around way longer than anybody possibly thought, and they've only been away for a couple of millennia. They've only vanished for a couple of millennia, but boy, are they coming back. So the advent of the Fae, who are there are corporeal Fae, spirit Fae, and animal Fae, and little Fae fairies as well. If you want to play a diminutive character, that will be possible too. They're coming soon, next year, to the Arcverse, and there'll be some artwork and sketches coming out. I'll be sharing around a little bit of the promo artwork from the Arclander. Our brilliant artist Claire who's been hard at work for us, along with Katya, and we will be announcing that pretty soon. So all systems go. Here we are at Verse Online, this veritable factory of creativity. And we'd love to hear from you. So if you enjoyed this podcast, like it, share it, do all the things, give us a thumbs up, give us a review, follow it, and we will obviously be getting back to you every Monday now. Take good care, everybody. All the best, and forge your power. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed Arclanders Assemble, remember to subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends, or give us a shout out. We'll need an army to stop the darkness that's coming. You can find us on Discord, World Anvil, YouTube, Twitter, DriveThru RPG and Kickstarter, and the links are available in the show notes. Catch next week's episode on iTunes, Spotify and all good pod hosters, and come and find us on social media. We'd love your feedback.